Hello, and welcome back to Is It Better Than Paddington 2? New semester, new season, even though the first season was technically only 2 episodes. This is the movie review show where myself and a guest come together to discuss whatever film I have chosen and ask the ever important question, is it better than Paddington 2? I'm your host, Ben Selsor. Today I have a very special guest joining me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Blake Selsor. I am an illustrator here at SIU. My biggest works include Quattro's Pizza and Carbondale Halloween.
We are real life biological brothers that are liking each other just enough to sit on this couch for like an hour and talk about some movies.
I am restraining myself very dearly.
You have no idea how much self-restraint this is taking on my part. Anyway, in this episode, we're doing something very special, something we've never done before in our previous 2 episodes. We are doing a double feature. So this episode, we are going to be looking at the 2 hit movies of the summer, Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Otherwise known as Barbenheimer.
Exactly. So, Barbie and Oppenheimer, as many of you may know, were highly popularized on the internet, very memed. The Barbenheimer event was very memed because both movies came out on the exact same day and have wildly different tones, but only one of them made me cry. So,
It was the cinematic equivalent of Animal Crossing New Horizons and Doom Eternal.
yeah, exactly like that. So you saw Barbie and then like a week later saw Oppenheimer. We saw Oppenheimer together. I saw Oppenheimer and then immediately drove 3 hours back to Carbondale to watch Barbie with a couple of friends of mine. So I saw them back to back. You didn't, and I just want to know, what were your like initial thoughts on both films?
Well, first thoughts on Barbie. Based off the advertising, what I thought it was gonna be was kind of like the Lego Batman movie, where it's gonna make fun of Barbie, but at the same time, it's also gonna be representative of what Barbie is. But I was not expecting the essentially how like the entire how political it was, like the kind like just talks of patriarchy and women's role in society today, and just how much that affects both men and women. I wasn't expecting something very deep. I was just kind of expecting like a dumb popcorn movie.
Yeah, I
Essentially.
wasn't expecting the Ken becomes a misogynist plot.
That was the funniest thing, though. Like, I did not
I
expect Ken to become the antagonist of the Barbie movie.
It was pretty funny. Ryan Gosling is a treasure. What about your initial thoughts on Oppenheimer?
Oh, Oppenheimer. I really liked Oppenheimer. I literally liked the direction. I liked how, despite the movie being nothing but standing around and talking, it kept my interest throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like Oppenheimer, it's a 3-hour movie for anybody who hasn't seen it. It is 3 hours long, which is a long amount of time to ask me to sit still and pay attention to something. Especially without the ability to pay attention to anything else because I was in a movie theater. You and I saw it in IMAX actually.
Yes, IMAX,
And
the appropriate way of seeing people sitting and talking.
good God, in IMAX is it like a religious experience? Like the sound just like shakes you to your core in an IMAX theater with how they did the sound design. And as a sound designer myself, like I was like freaking out the whole time. I was having the time of my life in Oppenheimer. And then later in Barbie, like it's a great palate cleanser after witnessing the worst of humanity, the worst that mankind has to offer. But also like so like emotionally resonant and like taking itself seriously in just the right ways while also having a little bit of levity. Anyway, the two movies, the one that made me cry was Barbie. Oppenheimer was like if Oppenheimer almost made me have like an anxiety attack in the theater, but that's just a testament to how great it is at showcasing probably one of the worst things that mankind has ever done or created.
Yeah, capitalism.
Right? So true, bestie. So like in terms of like objective qualities of each film, let's start with Oppenheimer. I already mentioned the sound design and is just incredible.
One of my favorite scenes was
Yeah.
like this whole progression of like just them testing out different explosions for the nuke bomb, and just the delay of the explosion. And then when you actually get to the first big nuke explosion, like there is no explosion sound for like a good solid minute or two.
I was gonna bring up the exact same scene because like the like complete silence in that portion of the film is like deafening.
Yeah, and then when it finally does go off, it kind of gets you a bit.
Yeah, it like especially like seeing it in IMAX, like it's so loud and so there and in your face. Like it feels like you're there almost like listening to it actually happen. And Christopher Nolan, like good God, like almost no green screen, pretty much entirely practical effects. What I'm trying to say here is Christopher Nolan is a fucking madman, but a brilliant madman.
That's actually the kind of thing I like about both Oppenheimer and Barbie is that they don't rely too heavily on CGI in this film. Like the Barbie, particularly like the Barbie Dreamhouse, is an actual set, not like something that we have some green screen stuff stands for you to walk on. No, like they actually went and built a Barbie Dreamhouse.
Yeah, like anybody who knows me and knows my opinions on movies is that I'm a practical effects guy 100% of the time. If you can make it practical, even if it looks a little silly, I love that so much more than CGI. I'm a proud puppet Yoda supremacist over the CGI prequel Yoda. So like just the like amount of stuff that Christopher Nolan was able to accomplish in Oppenheimer with just practical effects, specifically in terms of recreating the explosion of a nuclear bomb without practical effects, is just insane in the best way possible, like scarily really talented.
I think one of the big jokes that came online was because Christopher Nolan is known for like not using CGI unless he absolutely has to, is that when it was heard that he was going to recreate the nuclear bomb without CGI, people were thinking, oh, he actually detonated a real nuclear bomb.
Yeah, he mentioned he like found out about that meme and was like kind of scared and flattered at the same time that people thought that he would actually detonate a nuclear bomb for a film, which, you know, I think he would. I think he should have. I think he's a coward. In terms of like other elements of Oppenheimer though, like just the score I really want to talk about, cuz the score is like almost a constant throughout the movie. Like there are very few moments where you're just left in silence, like you're either hearing people talk or you're hearing the score in the background, and it just feels like one consistent piece that's like just flows throughout the entire 3 hours. And it was mesmerizing and it was also terrifying. Like one motif in the sound design, and I think you could consider it part of the score, is this thumping sound that you hear throughout the movie. It's like I thought it was a train at first, but you find out that it's after the first successful detonation of the bomb. You find out that it's people, like the scientists as part of the team, like stomping their feet in these bleachers. Because they're so excited that it worked. And it's like this sound that keeps coming back in these really haunting and terrifying moments. And it's such a good way of like creating tension and stress.
I agree with that. Especially concern like during the final images when you just where Oppenheimer actually imagines like images of like nuclear holocaust and you hear that thumping sound. It's like mankind just anticipating their destruction.
Right, right. Like the imagery of like fire consuming the earth. Because there was like a part of the story where it was like they weren't sure if detonating the bomb was going to set off a chain reaction that could destroy the world. Like there was a less than 1% chance of that being a possibility, but it was still a possibility. And so there's like all these flashes of like fire just like erupting and consuming the earth and everything, which very stressful imagery to see in a movie.
Yeah, and there's also like that one imagery of like the raindrops on the puddles, and then it cuts back to them like just the explosions in various different areas of the world. So it's like even like when they don't show like explosion practical effects, they actually show imagery related to like nuclear explosions and like World War III and all that.
Right, right. Yeah, and then like the casting was incredible.
I mean, I didn't. There were a lot of in both movies. There were actors I didn't even know were gonna be in the movie. Like I didn't know John Cena was gonna be in Barbie. Spoiler alert.
I forgot about
I
John
didn't
Cena.
know Rami Malek, the guy who
Rami
played
Malek.
Rami Malek, the guy who played Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody and was also in Night in the Museum. I didn't know he was gonna be in this. I didn't know Josh Peck was gonna be in
Yeah,
Oppenheimer.
I need to talk about Josh Peck because he's coming to SIU soon. But like both movies have like an insane all-star cast, and what happens in Oppenheimer is like it's like close to the nuclear detonation scene, to like the detonation of the first bomb, and they're like showing this montage of like telling people, like telling scientists on the team what their role is going to be during the detonation, and then the camera just kind of pans around and Josh Peck is sitting there inexplicably. Like that's the only time that I got really taken out of the movie because I didn't know Josh Peck was going to be there, and so the camera just moves and he's there and it's like Josh Peck jump scare and I was like, whoa, 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 this is the weirdest episode of Drake and Josh that we're on right now. But also, like, other incredible people in the cast. Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer himself is fucking brilliant.
Then you got Emily Blunt. You got Robert Downey Jr. as Senator Strauss.
Robert Downey Jr., I'm so glad that he's doing non-Marvel movies again
I mean,
because
he's a pretty good actor.
he's a great actor. He's always been a great actor, but like he's been like in the shadow of Iron Man. I feel for the past however many years, and so I'm glad to like see him getting recognition for other roles. Like I'm 100% certain like if he hasn't already been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, I think he's going to get that nomination for his role in this movie.
There was also Matt Damon as this general.
I forgot about Matt Damon. I love Matt Damon.
And then something I found out is that the actor who plays Albert Einstein was also in Paddington too.
He was. And the guy who plays Albert Einstein is in the movie, but like very rarely. And it's so
He just appears out of nowhere.
it's so funny. Like he's so silly to me. Like because he hardly says any lines. He just kind of is there with like his wild hair and his little mustache. And he like looks like very sad and somber sometimes. And it's just like, yeah, you go, man.
There's actually this one scene that is kind of a little bit funny. It's like I think after these people talk with Oppenheimer and they drive off, Albert Einstein just comes walking in.
Oh, I gotta mention. So like speaking of Marvel, I mentioned earlier, the MCU has like a bit of a habit with like a post-credits scene or like a line of dialogue just name dropping something that like, yeah, you know what that is, don't you? There's this scene towards the end of the movie where they're like voting on
Whether to confirm Strauss.
yeah, they're voting on whether to on Strauss's trial, and he doesn't get the outcome that he wanted. I can't remember specifically what it is, but
I think it was like Truman wanted him to be part of his cabinet, and then like this was a Senate confirming.
okay, yes, that's what it was. So they were voting on this, and he doesn't get confirmed. And so they're talking about like who voted against him. And
Actually, have the script with
let me
here.
read the line. Strauss says, "Who are the holdouts?" And then the Senate aide says, "There were three, led by the junior senator from Massachusetts, young guy trying to make a name for himself. Didn't like what you did to Oppenheimer. What's his name? Kennedy, John F. Kennedy." They like MCU name drop JFK, which leads me to believe that Christopher Nolan's going to make a sequel about the Kennedy assassination.
I'm pretty sure Robert Downey Jr. was just listening to the guy. Gosh darn it! Do I have to be in another cinematic universe?
There were two times I got pulled out of this movie. Josh Peck and JFK name drop. Like it's sequel bait. Like that's so funny to me. But like besides like those two instances and like everything else, like this movie, like the cast, incredible. The cinematography, incredible. The sound design, incredible. Like like objectively speaking, probably one of the greatest movies I've seen. Barbie, also incredible in
Right.
terms of like set design, costuming, makeup, like literally feels like toys coming to life.
Right. And here's the thing. We didn't grow up with Barbies. We were Lego kids, which is kind of funny because Will Ferrell's in this, and I'm pretty sure
Will Ferrell was
his
also in the
character is
Lego
also
movie.
the same as his character in Lego Movie.
I love the Lego movie. This, like, just like all of the costume design and the set design work so beautifully together. Like, again, I'm going to stress that practical effects are always better, no matter what. Even if it looks a little silly, it's always better.
And I think what I like the most is that it actually took inspiration from actual Barbie toys, like including ones that got recalled. Like Alan is specifically a recalled toy, and then
Alan.
Midge, which was pregnant Barbie, that was recalled. And so, like, going across Barbie's whole history and just using that to make this movie, I think that's pretty impressive.
I was a big fan of Weird Barbie as a
Oh
con.
yeah,
I
Kate
like
McKinnon is Weird Barbie, and she's the Barbie where you play too much with her. Like her hair's torn out, she's got marker all over her face, her legs bend in different places they shouldn't.
I love the idea of giving like that such a like not a niche concept because it's something that everybody knows about, but like something that you wouldn't see, like something we didn't see in like the Lego movie. Like the Lego movie,
It was basically just like original minifigures and then like any licensed brand that Lego was involved
right?
with.
But we didn't see like weird mismatched minifigures or like a random Playmobil figure thrown in. It was just Lego figures. Meanwhile, like in Barbie, they have the weird Barbie, and she's like this oracle sage that lives outside of town because she's like a weird reject, and it's so funny to me that she exists.
I also kind of like the humor in this movie. Like just even like when Barbie and Ken go to the real world and they're talking to the construction workers and they goes, I don't have a vagina, he doesn't have a penis. We have no genitals. And Ken's like, I have all the genitals. Just like yeah,
And
because
then like there's other pieces of humor that like it's very like brightly like bright dark satire almost. Like there's one joke where like one of the main human characters, the little girl, calls Barbie a fascist, and Barbie starts crying on a bench and says, I don't control railways or the flow of commerce. And it's just like it's so funny, not because it's like the alternative joke would be that Barbie doesn't know what a fascist is and thinks it's a compliment, and that's the far weaker joke. They chose the correct route with making Barbie know what a fascist is, but be confused as to how she could be a fascist.
what did I do wrong?
It's very funny to me. Speaking of this, casting in Barbie.
Margot
Like,
Robbie is stereotypical Barbie, the stereotypical Barbie, but like almost every other female character is named Barbie. That's
Yeah.
the funny part.
Almost every female character is Barbie. Almost every male character is Ken. And like Oppenheimer has really good casting. This movie has incredible casting. Like there is not a single misplaced role in this movie. Margot Robbie, I'm in love with her. She's perfect. Ryan Gosling as Ken, I'm in love with him. He's perfect.
And he has a jealous rivalry with like Simu Liu, the guy who plays Shang-Chi. He's
like
another Ken.
Ryan Gosling as Ken has like the funny rivalry with Simu Liu. I'm so sorry.
Shang-Chi from Marvel
I'm
Cinematic
so sorry if I'm
Universe.
mispronouncing his name. I'm fairly confident, but I've been confidently wrong before. But like they have like this like bro to bro rivalry over Barbie, and there's just so much sexual tension between them.
Right.
Like the opening scene with the two of them it was a scene that was in the trailers, has them both talking to each other about how they're gonna beach each other off, and
Barbie has to step in and be like, no one's beaching anyone off.
it's perfect. It's great. It's so funny. And all of the Kens are great. Michael Cera as Alan is perfect. Like Michael Cera just has the vibes of that guy that's in the back all the time, and I love that guy. He's just a silly little
And
guy.
something I discovered, like the actress who plays like the main human daughter that Barbie's trying to connect with was also little Gamora in Infinity War.
That's neat. Oh god, who else is in this movie?
John Cena is in this as a
John
mermaid.
Cena appears as a mermaid Ken, which is so funny.
We got Kate McKinnon
As weird Barbie.
Will Ferrell as the CEO of Mattel. Like Mattel is in this universe. It's not even subtle.
That's another thing. Like I thought based on the trailers that the plot was going to be that Barbie and Ken escape to the real world, and it's CEO of Mattel hunting them down and trying to get them to go back in their box, essentially, which does briefly happen. But no, the plot is that Barbie and Ken travel to the real world. Barbie is horrified at all the like mistreatment of women there is in the real world and how men act in this world because she's so used to the female dominated society of Barbie land. Meanwhile, Ken gets there and he is loving it. He's loving all the attention.
He's getting into the idea of the patriarchy.
For real. Like he thinks that like he's starting to realize that he's starting to think that he is not only equal to women but better than them. And he brings this idea of patriarchy back to Barbie land with him and essentially just turns the whole society on its head into a misogynistic society.
Like the Barbie dream house becomes Ken's dojo mojo something
Mojo
like that.
Dojo Casa House.
Right, and like they have like their like their president who as like a Hooters waitress. So it's like she's usually our president. I don't know why she's in a maid's outfit or something.
There's a very funny gag where whenever Barbie and Ken get to the real world for the first time, they see like a billboard advertising like the Miss Universe contest, and Barbie's like, "Oh, the Supreme Court," and I think that's hilarious.
Another actress I want to mention is Helen Mirren, is like the main narrator of this, and like there's a scene where
Oh, God,
Barbie
I
is
forgot
like
about
having a
her.
big breakdown, like I don't feel pretty enough, and then Helen Mirren goes, hey, note to the directors, if you really want to make this point, you probably should not cast Margot Robbie as this role.
Because Margot Robbie is beautiful.
Yeah, so obviously,
But like the joke about the Miss Universe models like being the Supreme Court, that is one very funny, but also like it's also like a very cool message that like
yeah, you maybe
Barbie sees these women in like as little clothing as can be possible without going to straight up nudity, but does not interpret them as being any less capable of being in a role like the Supreme Court just because they're showing skin, which I think is a very important
that's
message
a pretty
to
good.
send.
This movie has good messages.
There's a lot of very important messages. One, like that which I just mentioned, patriarchy harms everybody. Like Ken converts Barbie Land to Kendom, and it doesn't make him happy. Like he realizes that having this like heightened role in society is not making him a happier person anymore. Like it was never a source of happiness for him. His unhappiness with his life came from the fact that like without Barbie he had no purpose and
He was
Barbie
just
didn't
Beach
want
Ken.
him. Yeah, and Barbie didn't want him, therefore he had no purpose. But like he realizes that he doesn't need her to have a purpose. He is enough on his own. And I love that message. And Barbie realizes
There's
what is
more. I think she kind of learns that more about being human. Like there's a brief scene where she's trying to figure out who her toy owner is, because the whole
Right,
reason
yeah.
she's even going to the real world is like she's having thoughts about death, and like she's like
You guys
falling
ever
off
think
her
about
billing. Her feet fall flat, which makes one of the Kens puke. Not actually puke, just like
Yeah, they all just like start retching, which is funny.
right,
Right, like
and so she's like just sitting there, trying to closing her eyes, trying to picture this like imagery, and it's like just imagery of like kids growing up and like just being human, and she ends up crying a little bit, and then she looks at this old lady, and it's like you're beautiful, and she's like, yeah, I know that.
yeah, it's like Barbie's journey is like realizing that real life is very messy and strange and weird and depressing, and all of that is okay, and it's actually like some of the messiest parts of being a person are some of the best parts of being a person. And the movie ends with Barbie deciding to be a human in the real world and going to see a gynecologist. Which is very funny because she says it in a way like she says it in like the normal Barbie tone of like super excitement, like I'm here to see a gynecologist, and
And
it's
then the
such
movie ends.
and like then the movie ends, and like, it's such a funny line because that is nothing that anybody gets excited about. Like nobody is ever excited about that, but she's so ready to be like living mundane human life, and that's such like a nice message to pass on that like human life is kind of boring and lame, and that's okay. That's kind of cool,
And that's
actually.
also kind of ties in with like the mother of this girl. Like she's a CEO at Mattel, and she convinces the the CEO of Mattel, hey, let's make a Barbie that's just normal everyday Barbie. Like she doesn't want to be anything, but that's okay. And of course, the CEO is like, I don't think that's going to work until they tell him, hey, we can make a ton of money off of this. Like, good, that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, Will Ferrell is the CEO of Mattel, is very funny.
And like we mentioned, like we're convinced that it's his role in the Lego movie, and it's not even subtle because he wears like the same suit and tie and has almost a
Has the
similar
same haircut.
hairstyle.
I hope it's the same.
I really hope. I mean, it's a too far of a coincidence that they are not connected in some way. Like he's the CEO of a toy company, then he goes home and plays with toys. Like, how come
That's
on?
that's very funny. But like gosh, this movie Barbie made me so emotional. Like Oppenheimer made me feel
Depressed.
fear and shame and depression at the state of humanity and what we were willing to do. I got to mention it. There's this one line in Oppenheimer. It 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 makes me mad that it's like the line itself makes me mad, but it's also very important to have in the film, and I believe it might have been ad-libbed. But they're talking about it's after the nuclear bomb test, so they know it's going to be successful. So they're trying to figure out the best target to drop it on, and the best target in Japan to drop the bomb. And this guy, this like high-ranking war general, is going through a list of cities. Gets to, I believe, is it Kyoto or Tokyo?
I think it's Kyoto. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. He gets to Kyoto and he crosses it off the list because like they were taking some cities off the list because of their cultural importance, but he crosses Kyoto off the list because, in his own words, him and his wife like to holiday there. And it's just such a disgusting, vile line to show how little these people cared for the like innocent human lives that they were about to completely obliterate with the dropping of these bombs.
And going back to Oppenheimer, like I think one of the big criticisms against the movie is not showing the actual destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And on one hand, there's been plenty of other movies, especially movies made by Japan, that depict the nuclear blast at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that I don't think we need to add another one to the count. And number
1954's Godzilla.
and number two, the movie is mainly about Oppenheimer and his involvement with the Manhattan Project. So it's like we don't need to show every minute detail of what happened. And number three, it's not like it doesn't show it happen. There's a scene like where, like after the first successful test and after they dropped in on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and Japan surrenders, like they're having a bit. Oppenheimer's giving a big speech, but then he imagines like
He
the
imagines
effects
like
of the bomb on the Japanese people, but it's on the faces of his scientists he worked with.
yeah, he like sees like the people that he's worked with. He sees like there's like this bright light that keeps like getting brighter throughout the scene, and he sees like their skin being flayed off.
He steps on a charred course. Like there's a couple that are like crying and hugging together as he steps outside. There's someone throwing up, and that's also an interesting thing that we got into because we didn't know, is he throwing up because he was close to the nuclear blast that he's already feeling the radiological effects of, or is this all just part of Oppenheimer's imagination? And that's what's cool about it, is that it's really left up to your interpretation. Like it doesn't have to fully explain it for you.
It's such a God, both of these movies are so good, and they both make me feel strong emotions. Like I was saying, Oppenheimer made me feel shame, disgust, anger, stuff like that. But like watching Barbie, it made me feel like so profoundly aware of my humanity, and in such a way that it was just like it touched my heart.
With Ken's musical number, exactly.
I'm Just Ken.
By the way, the music in Barbie is also pretty good.
There's several original songs that were created for this movie. One of them is I'm Just Ken, which is sung by Ryan Gosling and all the Kens, and it is an incredible rock ballad in which Ken expresses the fact that he is done just being an accessory and that he is enough on his own. And it's such a good scene in the movie because like it starts off with like a Ken war, and then they do this like dance off moment, but then they unite at the end and all sing together. And
then
it's
they
such
realize,
a beautiful
hey,
moment.
wait, were we supposed to do something? And then they realize, oh, wait, we forgot to vote to change the Barbie constitution, and the Barbies vote and, keep it in place. And so, like, they just realized, darn it, we missed out on voting.
Right, yeah, like it was all part of the Barbies, like get the Kens to turn against each other by like pretending to be interested in them, but then pretending to be interested in other Kens. So the Kens all turn against each other. And it's such a funny moment because like it's so simple and it's so representative of real life. They get the Kens to think they're interested by just like going up to them and like asking them like, "Hey, tell me about horses."
Hey, tell me about The Godfather in full detail.
Exactly. And it's silly and it's played for a joke, but that's just how guys are in real life. Like go up to a guy, figure out what his main interest is and say, "Tell me about that." And he will not shut up. It's perfect. It's such a good moment in the film. And like, gosh, these are both such good movies. Like but both of them my most anticipated movies of the year, and so far no movie this year has been able to top either of them for me.
And with the whole like memes of like combining the two together, like making it a double feature, I'm just kind of amazed. Like it's happened twice. Like I mentioned, Animal Crossing, New Horizon, and Doom Eternal had the same release date, and like now we have a cinematic version of it. And now later in September we're gonna have another Paw Patrol movie, but also the next Saw movie is coming out on the same day. So now people are saying, oh, we're gonna have Saw Patrol.
I'm gonna be real with you, Chief. I ain't going to see a Paw Patrol movie for the bit.
Yeah, I mean, we have our limits.
I ain't
honestly.
even gonna go see a Saw movie for the bit.
But I mean, just the fact that we're living in this age where, like, if two movies come out on the same day that are just so polar opposite of each other, like, people are gonna make it like a double feature kind of thing, like semi-ironically, but also like they kind of see both. And honestly, both movies are kind of similar. Like they have great actors, they have great set design, sound design. They're generally both good movies, and they're both made by like pretty talented directors in their
Right.
field.
Greta Gerwig is a genius. Christopher Nolan is a genius. It's just like it was this like phenomenon on the internet. Like people were like making art and making outfits and making so much because of how ridiculous this like pairing of movies is. And some people have seen it as like a little insensitive.
I can kind of see where they're coming from, but at the same time, they're two movies. It's just the juxtaposition of the two that I kind of get the idea.
Right. And in a lot of ways these movies are like a lot more similar than they are different. Like they're both very emotional at their core. They both like focus on mankind and like the state of humanity in different ways. They both focus on these two different aspects of society, war and
Living.
And like living and gender roles and all of that. And they tackle very serious issues despite the fact that on the outside they look like completely different movies.
And also not to mention the fact that one is a toy commercial and the other is based off not just someone's real life, but is even based off an actual book that's about Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's based on a biography.
American Prometheus, I believe it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you have two movies that are not entirely original, but like just the fact that the people are so creative enough to make it original is what I think is going to make these movies last for a long time.
I agree. And with that said, I think it is time to rate the movies. So I will let you go first. The way that this works is we're going to give each film a rating from 1 to 5, and we're going to average out our ratings for the movie. In this case, we're going to give Barbie a 1 to 5 rating, Oppenheimer a 1 to 5 rating, and average out all 4 ratings. And then we're going to compare them to the Paddington 2 rating, which is a 4 out of 5. So if it's above a 4 out of 5 on average, it's better than Paddington 2. So I'd like you to go first. Let's start with Oppenheimer. What would you rate Oppenheimer on a scale of 1 to 5?
I would probably say a 4 out of 5,
Okay.
honestly. I mean,
Could
it's
you care to
very
explain?
I mean, it's got a lot of good stuff, but there's also some stuff that I think could be cut out. Particularly the scene of like Florence Pugh doing the nasty in the interrogation room with Oppenheimer.
That's fair.
That's like there's stuff like that that could be cut out. And I guess at one point, like after the bomb goes off and we're back in the interrogation room, I did have a moment and was like, "Is this movie almost over?" Like it kept me interested throughout the whole thing, but like at one point I was wondering how much longer was the movie because like we had officially got to the goal of making the nuclear bomb. What else do we have to talk about?
Yeah, that comes at like the halfway point.
Yeah, exactly. That's the shocking thing. It's like halfway through the movie.
There's
We're
like
not
another
even
hour
done.
left after that. That's fair. I personally like, with all aspects of the film considered, the incredible cast, the incredible score, the incredible sound design, the amazing, amazing cinematography. I cannot, in good conscience, give Oppenheimer anything less than a 5. Like, I gotta like maybe it's the IMAX experience elevating it for me. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a sound designer myself, and hearing pretty sounds will automatically make a movie better for me. But good God, Christopher Nolan! Like I think that was my review of it after I got out of the theater. I wrote my letterboxed review, um, and I think it was just the words "Good God, Christopher Nolan." So I cannot give Oppenheimer anything less than 5 stars for those reasons. But what about Barbie? What would you rate Barbie out of
I would
5?
probably also give it a 4 out of 5 because the reason, I mean, many of the same reasons, but also like it was just a different movie than I was expecting. So, like, because I was expecting like a kind of a dumb popcorn movie, like kind of like the Lego Batman movie where it makes fun of the original property, but also is being true to the original property as well. So I was kind of expecting something more, like goofy and lighthearted, especially considering the fact that Mattel is in this movie. It's just like I figured it was gonna take shots at Mattel, but also like be like, "Hey, we're cool, are we, guys?" But I was not expecting like this heavy pieces on like feminism and patriarchy and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So, I mean, that kind of affected the movie viewing experience for me. But
You
looking
you
and
went in expecting something different than what you got.
right and
I gotcha.
right, but like looking back on it now, there is a lot of good elements. But for those reasons, I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 5.
I understand that. It was also like a very different viewing experience for me than I was expecting. However, it got me with the practical effects. It grabbed my eyeballs with that. It grabbed my ears with all the great original songs. The casting is great. The set design and costuming is great. Everything's great. So I also have to give Barbie 5 stars. Like, it's such it was such an emotional journey watching, like, seeing them back to back. I think also changed it for me because you saw them in the reverse in order that I did, and you
Also
didn't
saw
see them
them in
back
a
to back. You
different,
saw them a few days apart.
yeah.
I saw them back to back in the same day. Oppenheimer, 3 hour car ride to think about Oppenheimer. Barbie, like, that was my day for whenever I saw it. So I don't know if that's like fixing my rating a little bit, but I gotta give Barbie a 5 star. It was just such a great movie experience for me, like a movie theater experience for me. There's like very rarely is there a movie that I would 100% of the time rather see in theaters, but both of these movies I would rather see in theaters than ever like on my home screen, especially Oppenheimer, but that's besides the point. So with these ratings, 2 4-stars and 2 5-stars, that gets us to about an average rating of 4.5, which makes Barbenheimer just slightly better than Paddington 2. Do you have any feelings about this?
Not at all. I feel like that's kind of deserved. And then again, like these are technically different movies than Paddington 2 because Paddington 2 is slight is really more meant for younger kids, which is very shocking considering the fact that most of it is just Paddington goes to jail.
Right, yeah, that's the plot.
Right. And so like it's kind of weird, but like it's just how he befriends the prisoners and the guards, like just how he makes them happy and all that. And
It's a very sweet movie.
like so it's like just a sweet movie about a bear like in prison helping out the poor people in prison. And you're going up against a movie about feminism and patriarchy and about essentially the man who created the weapon that could kill us all.
Yeah,
So it's like hard to actually compare any of those movies together.
right. That's why I just set the solid 4 stars for Paddington 2, so that way we could save some time. So that's all for this episode of Is It Better Than Paddington 2? I'd like to thank you all for listening. And be sure to tune in next time for whatever film we choose to discuss next. And until then, remember, if we're kind and polite, the world will be right. See y'all.
Bye.